R&B superstar R. Kelly has been found guilty of racketeering and sex trafficking after prosecutors branded him a predator who exploited his fame to lure women and underage girls for sex.
A jury of 7 men and 5 women found R. Kelly guilty on all counts after just their second day of deliberations. The 54-year-old is one of the most prominent people tried on sex abuse charges during the Me Too movement. And joining us now is R. Kelly's ex-wife, Drea Kelly, who told this show back in 2019 you were emotionally, physically, sexually abused by R. Kelly. Thank you so much for coming back on the programme this morning. I think what might seem remarkable to people, Drea, is that it has taken this long.
Yeah, I think that it's really, really sad. And I think that as a human race, we really need to look at women in general. I have often said that if any of his victims were blonde-haired and blue-eyed, it wouldn't have taken this long. Women of color tend to be lowest on the totem pole when it comes to subjects of domestic violence, sexual abuse. So it's really sad that it took this long, but I guess we're making some movements forward.
You were married to him for 13 years, between 1996 and 2009, and I think one of the hardest things for you is that you share 3 children with him. I mean, this is a man who's been accused of multiple abuses, including against, minors, and now faces life in prison. What are your thoughts as his ex-wife and the mother of his children?
Well, I sit in a very difficult place because unlike the rest of his victims, I also share children with him. I was married to him, so I wear 2 hats. I wear the hat of a survivor and an advocate, but I also wear the hat of a mother and an ex-wife. So it's very difficult for me. I feel that my heart is in 2 places. My heart definitely goes out to the survivors and the courage that it takes to even come forward and tell the story. But my heart breaks as a mother because this is now the legacy that my children will have to deal with and their children's children. At the end of the day, you cannot walk away from your bloodline. I have the ability to separate and kind of distance myself from it, but his blood runs through my children's veins. It's a part of their DNA. They can't escape it even if they wanted to. So it's very difficult for me to sit in that position.
I watched last night, Drea, I watched the interview that you did the last time you came on the programme, and your daughter, Joanne, said she still loved her father, but she felt she had to love him from a distance. And how does that relationship survive something like this?
Well, I can't answer for my daughter because, again, I can only speak to my journey as his ex-wife and a survivor and an advocate. But I think that that goes to say with any child, it doesn't matter if your parents have a problem with drug addiction. You are still going to love them because they are a part of your DNA. You share blood with them. I also support my children in whatever they feel because at the end of the day, whether he ever sold another song, found guilty or not guilty, what is true and will always be true is that it's their father. So they have the right to feel whatever they feel. But I think what is healthy, no matter, like I said, if your parent is addicted to drugs or if they're an alcoholic, you have to know how to protect your mental state and love them from a distance. And they're not allowed to be toxic in your life just because they are your parent.
Just to remind viewers of the court case. He's been found guilty of being the ringleader of a racketeering and sex trafficking scheme that preyed on women and children. He had rules and would punish those women and children for breaking them. And the rules included times when they could use the bathroom, when they could eat, when they could make phone calls. There would be punishments for looking at other men. You've said anything could set him off, from the milk being cold, or wearing something too revealing, or too much tone in your voice, even if someone came to the house and you spoke. I mean, what was that like to live with?
It's a life of constant fear. And if anyone has done their research, and I hope that more journalists will, if you decide to interview more victims and survivors, knowing the cycles of abuse, it's called walking on eggshells. That's what it means. That is the term that is used when you never know what you're going to get. Like I did say in an interview before, yes, having the milk too cold, and then one time it's not cold enough if you spoke and you weren't supposed to. I can only say that my journey and what I went through, what I have heard speaks very true to my life. it is parallel to my life, and there's no way for anybody else to know it because I haven't shared it with anyone unless they've been through it themselves. But it's constant fear, the intimidation, never knowing which version of him you're going to get. It is very much Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But again, I'm not here to really speak to the details of it. I'm really here to just speak to the strength that it took for those people to come forward and tell their stories and stand in their truth, knowing that they had the whole world coming against them because they did the same thing to me. But I will say this for those who were naysayers. My grandmother used to have a saying, everybody's not lying on you. It's impossible over 20 to 30 years, 30 different people to all have the same journey and story and have survived the same thing, and it all be a lie.
Yeah.
And you've spoken, Drea, about what you call victim shaming, where you felt that actually the culture around this issue meant that you would be shamed if you came out and spoke, and that some of the other victims perhaps felt the same. Do you think that has changed or is changing, or is there still a real problem with that?
I think that it's slowly changing as women's voices are being heard, but I also think that victim shaming and victim blaming is kind of supported and tucked away in our society. I often say as little girls, when we grow up on the play yard and a little boy pushes you down or he pulls your hair, you go to tell your teacher, what's the one thing that we teach little girls? Oh, he's doing it because he likes you. So we're taught at a very young age as women to believe that love from men comes with violence. Also, when you look at our society, pedophilia is tucked into our everyday lives. We have Halloween coming up in October, which is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Why are we selling naughty schoolgirl costumes? So there's a lot that we do in this now called rape culture in society, where women are really put in a position to not be protected at all.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Drea. I mean, it began with coercive control, didn't it, for you? And then, you know, it got to the point where you literally lived in fear for your life. I mean, terrible behaviour. I just wonder, in any way, because you just talked about the fact that, you know, sometimes there's shaming of victims, sometimes there's this suspicion that you're lying. Now that there is a conviction, does it release any of the weight on you that this has been recognised in a court of law and he will serve time, possibly the rest of his life in prison?
In a way it does, and in a way it doesn't. Like I said, it's great that we've taken a step forward, but it's what happens outside of the courtroom. It is most important that women are supported to even feel like that they have the strength to come forward and tell their stories. If there's still victim shaming, victim blaming, and women being afraid to even speak their truth, we can never get to a court system where justice can be served. So we have to start there first, where when women, children, and even men, because they can be victims of domestic violence, feel supported by society to come forward and tell their stories, that's when justice is really going to be served.
Drea, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And, you know, it's obviously a difficult time for you and your family. We send you the very best.